Hi, and welcome to another installment of my series, Speaking with Media Product Leaders. And today I'm really happy to be speaking with Sisi Wei, who is the Assistant Managing Editor at ProPublica. So thanks for talking with me today, Sisi.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm really happy for you to share some of the ways that ProPublica does storytelling with data and creating the products that you create for your users. So first of all, let's start with your background. Can you give a short synopsis of the steps you took to kind of get to this position that you're in right now?
Yeah, sure. Very short. I went to journalism school undergrad, but I realized there that I also liked design and I also liked to code. And so my journey after doing some internships is that I worked at the Washington Post as a graphics editor. And then after that, I came to ProPublica as a news apps developer. About 2 years ago, I got promoted to run the team. So I was the editor of the team. And then about a year ago, or maybe a little less than a year ago, I was promoted to assistant managing editor. That essentially means that now I both edit and run the news apps team, but I also run sort of cross collaborative projects in the newsroom. And so involving other teams, I might edit their work as well.
So as we said, ProPublica is known for telling stories as products, using data in the investigative reporting that you do. Can you talk about some of the product? I know you've worked on a lot of products, but can you talk about some of the products that you're working on now and maybe some of the ones you've worked on in the past?
Yeah, so I think one that I have to bring up is our blockbuster, and it's also our first one, and it also happened to be the first ProPublica news app, which is what we call them here, that I worked on when I joined, which is Dollars for Docs. I think it's a really amazing example of like a way for you to think of stories as products. We don't talk about that here internally. We talk about them as projects, as stories, but essentially, when you describe Dollars for Docs, it is a product. So essentially, or ProPublica basically did an investigation into all of the doctors in America that take medical insurance from Medicare. That's about 50% of every doctor in America. And essentially, what we found is that people are taking payments from drug companies while they're prescribing those drugs to their patients. But we couldn't do a story on every single instance of this happening, right? So we did a traditional investigations as you would expect in journalism, but then we came out with an app. And what that means is a single topic website that allows anybody who goes to it to be able to type in the name of a doctor and see which drug companies pay them, on what dates did it happen, for what reason was it listed, and then for you to also see what drugs does this person most commonly prescribe. But obviously, if you're one of their patients, you know exactly what you've been prescribed, and we give you a tip sheet on how to talk to your doctor about it.
That one's definitely one of my favorites. There's not a class that I teach that I don't talk about that and the sort of importance of the topic as well as the way you all have structured that. What kind of things is ProPublica working on now that you can talk about?
Yeah, so the things that we work on now are a mishmash of everything that you would think of as traditional journalism data visualization, right? People really like to think about election night graphics. We don't do that kind of thing here, but we might do something similar, have a similar sort of one story treatment on a project that we do now. The ones that are bigger and closer to Dollars for Docs, there's one from 2 years ago that I could talk about that sort of we still get cited on today. It's called Bombs in Your Backyard. So that project is essentially an investigation we did on basically military waste that the Pentagon has been burying underground all over the country. And what's kind of incredible about that project is that we named it Bombs in Your Backyard because it's literally everywhere, and people have no idea whatsoever. And we allow you to see and put in your location, and then immediately zoom you into a space, and then you can look up, I just want to see an overview of see how many of these sites there are around me, or I can really dig into each of those sites. And so if you see something nearby, near your high school, you can click on it, and then we give you a ton of details about what literal chemical toxins are supposed to be there. What do we know about what happened? What is the Pentagon, like essentially what has the Pentagon released to us about it? And then finally, sort of, were there any cleanup efforts, or what is the estimated cost of this? And it's sort of just an incredible data set. And it sort of falls into this category when we think about these big apps that we do of what superpower can we give the general public, right? What is information that they ought to have access to that is their right to know, but they don't right now?
obviously some thought has to go into creating these ideas, like finding the direction that you're going to go with a story. What techniques do you do to come up with? Do you use to come up with these ideas? And what techniques do you use to better understand the audience's needs for these products?
hmm So this is where being a part of journalism is actually really helpful, is that the most basic version of what the answer is that we ask people. And so when it comes to these projects, right, we always have an inkling, a suspicion, right? And either that's this new data set came out, there must be something interesting in it, or we've been talking to some people and they've all been telling us something similar. I wonder if there's data to back that up. It's always one or the other, and it comes from sort of just having sort of that curiosity that journalists have when they go out in the world and sort of try to figure out what should I write about. And then when it comes to understanding what the audience needs, we like to think about it in three separate sort of spheres. So the first one is just the general public. If I'm just a normal person, I'm not particularly interested in this topic already, what would be interesting to me and what would I want to know, right? So with doctors, immediately it's like, well, if I have a doctor, I probably really want to know about them, so I better make it easy for them to look someone up. But then the other thing we think about is sort of change agents, right? So as investigative journalists, one of our goals is to have impact, and that's written into our mission as an organization. And so to have impact, we need to figure out who has power to change the situation. Sometimes it's the same as the general public, but sometimes it's not. And so, for example, we've done other projects in which we've identified that people who can change the status quo are hospital administrators or the principal at your high school, right? And so then we also build in views and ways to cut and look at the data that allow people who manage a group of people or a group of institutions to compare them all against each other. We also tell them how they rank with their peers, right? So whenever we do anything like this about colleges, we only compare you to people that are similar. So if you're private, we compare you to private. If you're 4 years, we only do that so that people feel like it's a fair comparison. And even in that case, they're either doing really well or they're not doing well at all. Um, and then finally, the last sort of sphere that we look at for audience is other journalists. So we're a Creative Commons kind of place. And so anybody can reprint most of our articles for free. You just have to give us credit. When it comes to the apps, it doesn't quite work in the same way because it's hard to like republish an app for free in terms of how the internet works. But what we love is spurring local journalists to be able to write stories of their own because we just can't possibly write all the stories there are to write. And so we also want to build the app in a way that's easy for journalists to be able to write their own stories.